All right, welcome back to the Double Swing. We are now covering the Blast Premier full groups. We just had EWC finish, and we're going straight into this. I mean, we almost recorded this the day before the grand final of EWC, but I thought, nah, let's get that out the way. Let's get all of our narratives established before we dive into the next episode in the series. No guest this time, so no one sandwiched between the two of us making picks in the place of the viewers. But it's going to be interesting. First, we need to quickly recap what happened last time. It was a rough event for most people involved. I mean, it's always difficult when it's an event that's like got 16 or 15 teams, but you only have like an elimination bracket at the end and then a champion. Like the Blast is going to be a lot more forgiving. You know, your team just needs to get out of the groups to get some points. So basically finish top 6. But in this case, yeah, things went well for me. My Na'Vi pick, I took a bit of a shot in the dark, considering I have had question marks about their individuals, not about their coaching or IGLing. It's just, you need people to shoot heads in Counter-Strike. Well, guess what? They did it, and they did it by the bucket load, especially in that grand final where people, myself included, were having those Copenhagen flashbacks. It's Inferno, map 3, bits hitting heads. It wasn't as extreme, but it was still reminiscent, and yeah, nice to see that the players we want to be the stars of that team actually show up and deliver and get me 2 points. So I was able to extend the lead, as unfortunately none of your picks made the final because no one else picked G2. It was a topic that came up before. It's probably going to come up again.
It's actually kind of wild that we had 12 out of the 15 teams that we could have picked. And, you know, we have 6 out of the top, out of the 8 that we could have picked in the favorites category. And we just don't pick G2. And I don't hate us for it. You know, we all looked at that roster. We all see the roster changes and say, let's just see how it's going to develop. Not expecting them to make a final of all things. So, I mean, a very surprising final. But to be honest, Na'Vi deserved to win it. They were playing some actually like well-rounded Counter-Strike that entire event.
Yeah, they got into when I started doing the grand final preview. And I'd been watching the games. I'd been actually really locking in on this event, and watching Na'Vi's Mirage especially was at times a work of art. But I want to, yeah, we are going to have to talk about this more in the actual show. That's enough for the recap. Of course, no one's underdogs did a damn thing last time because they had the most ridiculous path to even try and get us some points. So that's pretty much the long and the short of it. Viewers, you were represented by Hawker. I didn't make that official until I realized I kind of had to. It didn't make any sense otherwise. So you guys took also a fat 0, so get mad at him. He was so happy with his Vitality and Mouse picks.
They just get to know what we feel like because we can't overlap our picks with each other, right? Like the viewers can pick our picks, but we can't pick each other's. Yeah,
it's kind of rough for us. So yeah, it's going to suck. I do want to get more guests involved in the future because I do think it's fun to like slightly level the playing field between us and the silent, ever-watching observers. So let's get into this. I had the first pick, or did you? I think you had the first pick, you did. Who did you take as your first favorite?
So first, I just want to shout out the fact that we're skipping over the Sky Esports Championship or whatever, because...
we kind of have to, like schedule-wise and who is attending. I thought about it, but I was man, I want to have a life as well.
Yep, and you know, that's because they don't have teams like this in attendance. I've gone with Spirit. And listen, Spirit may house one of the top 2 players in the world. G2 may house one of the top 2 players in the world, but neither of them actually played that well at Esports World Cup. In fact, I didn't think either of them were playing even to their own standard. Neither of them seemed very locked in, if I had to put like just poor colloquialisms onto it. Spirit, I think, will do much better in an event like this where they've got chances instead of just, you know, single loss and you're basically out of the tournament type beat. Spirit, I think, are just going to be a solid pick regardless of the landscape of things. Like Na'Vi may have come away from that this Esports World Cup and actually won it, but you know, a format like this favors a team like Spirit where they have good late round closers, they have good openers, and they are able to adapt in a number of ways when rounds do blow up in their face. So I have no doubts that even with a poor showing from the first tournament of the season, Spirit are going to just do fine here and make it out of the group.
It is hard to see them not making out of the group. But then again, it was hard to see them getting bodied by G2 in the way they did. Like, that was a pretty shocking one that I've actually decided I was going to go back and watch the demos just from Donk's perspective, because that's one of the worst series he's played in his entire career. 0.82 rating, I think he ends with. And especially, okay, there's a combination of things. I was hoping I'd dive in there and I'd see just G2 figuring out his tendencies, knowing where he's going to be playing from, and always having a nade stack ready, always having a double swing ready. And it was the case about 20% of the time. The other 80, it's a combination of he got really unlucky or he straight up whiffed, which I'm not sure is going to actually be able to carry over into any other tournaments. Like, when you peek from Donut as like a double swing, like in the pistol round, and you're dead before you even come around the corner because they were killed you by accident shooting the guy in front of you, what? It's not a skill issue. Like, it's just luck. Like, when you full flash Malb swing and he double headshots you with a Galil full blind, it's just a luck issue. So I do think Spirit are going to look stronger because their game plan does revolve around Donk. He takes the most important fights and he takes an incredibly high volume of engagements. So with a Donk that's not getting so much screwed and who's looking a little bit sharper, I'm sure they'll be just as dangerous as we really expect them to be.
Yeah, no, and I even think, Magic's played a pretty decent tournament for them, but for me, Magic's is not supposed to be the win condition. He's only had a good tournament basically because the rest of the team isn't functioning to full capacity. And that seems to be where Magic's does his best work. But then, at a certain point when it got to that G2 series, Magic's did seemingly slow down from what was actually kind of keeping them alive in the tournament. So I think this team just has good firepower, good teamwork. They'll be fine. I actually don't even have a doubt. It feels so stupid to even be hesitant about Spirit for me because this Esports World Cup, I think there were some teams that did come a little sleepy off of the player break that just didn't show full force.
Yeah, we do usually expect a little bit of that. Honestly, typically, historically, we expect coming out the break, the first event's usually Blast, and we usually expect G2 to look awful. Now, I think maybe this change up as in they have a new IGL and it's also an event that's like big money abroad, like in a different continent, has an actual stage involved, like a stage component, was able to, I think, jog like some of the they're usually quite sleepy circuit boards like into activation because Hunter, that's not usually the Hunter we expect to see, right? Like, especially coming straight out the gates, usually at a Blast, it's not going to be this guy. But that's enough about G2, a team we didn't pick. I'm going to move on to my first favourite. And I picked them last event. I'm going to pick them again. They did me well. And this time I'm picking them as my first favourite, giving Na'Vi all my confidence. And that's for a couple reasons. Firstly, I think in terms of IGL coach tandem, no one has a team better drilled, better prepared, and better executing right now than this Na'Vi side. The first thing that just alerted me at this event that they were going to be fearsome was their Mirage. They got to play it in most of their series, not the grand final, but all the series before then, pretty much, they got to play Mirage, and they executed it so beautifully. Like, we're talking flash combos into mid, nade flash combos to bait attention just to blind people to then swing. Like, it made Counter-Strike look easy and, honestly, artistic at times. We don't expect them to really have firepower consistently across all events. That's been our biggest issue with this team. It's why we've called the major run a fluke, because whilst there is no doubt that they have the right approach to the game, you still need to hit the shots, and they've had trouble with that. I'm going to take a bet on them having enough of it to get them out of the group, alongside being just so well coached and called.
Yeah, I mean, Bit and Wonderful both had an incredible tournament, and Bit wasn't really, in my mind, when this team was built at first, Bit wasn't the guy that was going to become a star. Like, this is a guy that would be reliable, he wouldn't ever cause problems, and was honestly, I think, going to have some struggles integrating into the team considering it's his first international roster. So for me, it was always between JL or Imma to take up that star role, but if Bit can fulfill that role and JL can basically slot into what Bit used to be, then that's a refinangling of the roles that makes a lot of sense in my mind. If Bit can prove that he can show that ceiling consistently, then you don't need JL to have a live tournament for you to win it. If Bit can have stable output, then you have that role fixed up. I still have concerns about the Alexi B, Imma, and Blade, all having insights into rounds. But I actually think I saw Imma kind of shut up more when he was playing through rounds, and it seemed to actually help him individually to just play to a level that wasn't a detriment, which is great. You know, I'll happily take that. You can have a support player, and Immo, from being a star on GamerLegion and supposed to be the star of this Na'Vi team, becoming a support player. It works, and it's shown that it works. So I have a lot of time to give to this Na'Vi roster, because I think Wonderful is actually probably one of the more slept on AWPers within the tier 1 space at the moment, because he was damn good at Copenhagen too, and he was damn good here, but he's overshadowed by some of the star rifle work that his teammates are putting together. He has done a lot to, I think, increase the floor of this team. I genuinely think even if they substituted like the simple of old into Wonderful spots, they would be playing worse. So I have a lot of time to give to this roster in terms of just like good, well thought out, stable players that can actually execute on some of this game planning that Alexi and Blade seem to be putting together.
Yeah, I get why Wonderful has been overlooked this year entirely. That it has been a case of superstar potential, mechanically, they can't really find a flaw, but just struggling to find the moments to activate and land shots in the big events. Like at the grand final of Copenhagen, he's pretty much a non-factor. And that's, I think, played a big part in the narrative we have of him not quite being up there with the elites, him still having to battle for position with guys like Torji in terms of his ranking in the world. That's, I think, still a valid conversation just because of that. This event was 100% a step in the right direction, especially some of the games they played. When he played straight up against Torji in that head-to-head, he outshined him, excelled. He played fantastically, and then on the Mirage final map, just battered him, and that was phenomenal for him. But if he can keep that up, oh yeah, we're cooking with gas. I mean, we don't need Bit or JL to actually be a proper full-on, full-time star if I'm getting a Wonderful putting up elite AWPer numbers, elite AWPer performances. Then I don't need those guys to be as effective. They can sit at their 1.11 year-round. That team's still going to win events. That's still more than enough to win events if they actually have him at that level consistently. That's just been the issue.
And Wonderful's been great in mainly mid-rounds and early rounds. Like, his late rounds, that was that Monacy 1v3 against them where Wonderful just misses a sitter on Monacy wide swinging out from default on B on Ancient. And you're just thinking, that's a shot that, you know, if he wasn't in a pressure situation, he just hits and they win that round. And, you know, Monacy doesn't come away with another one of these 1v3 highlights like he did against VP as well. So, yeah, no, I think there's obviously still room to grow for this guy, but he's doing a lot, and he's doing it damn well. So I don't hate the Na'Vi selection. I think a lot of my problems with this team are being ironed out from the back end.
Yeah, I think importantly, Imma taking a back seat vocally is going to be important, just because, he's still, even when he's on his game, it's still kind of inconsistent. This is something I've talked about where he is going to be a very risk, what's the opposite of averse? Like, he's a risk taker. He's risk versed. Like he just loves to take the risk, make the extra push, the extra play. And in that sense, where you see like on maps like Mirage, where he is the sort of underpassed late round lurker onto the A plays, he's actually way more active than other guys who play those spots. Guys like Spinks will often get themselves just locked out of a round because they're so slow to activate. Imma's almost at times too fast, and that's what caused him to take stupid deaths. That's why his DPR is so high, his cast stays low because he's untradeable in these spots. But it is a certain element of like wildcardness that I think kind of works for Na'Vi in the recipe if everything else is well thought out and everyone else actually is capable of clicking where they should be. So that's what I'm liking so far, and that's why, we saw them at this event completely outclass G2 in that grand final and outplay everyone, including Mouse, like outcall them and frag well enough for it to not be a skill issue at all. I'm really hyped on what I saw.
So I guess I'll just transition. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was about to say, before I wax lyrical for too long, go ahead and bring out your second favorite.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're talking about great combos for in-game leaders and their coaches, and I think this team are going to be one of those combos that we have to consider, because I think they had a lot of good steps in the right direction at this event in terms of the way that they're structuring rounds, the way that they're building together rounds. I've gone with Virtus Pro, and I don't think there's any real surprise for the viewers at home, because I love picking this team almost to a fault. But they did. I actually think they did well at this event. Even in the game against G2, I think they put themselves into a lot of round-winning scenarios. They got themselves into a lot, even though they were very frequently losing opening kills, and they were obviously fishing for opening kills a lot. They did a lot of good work making the rounds more compelling than they actually could have been if you looked at some of the other teams at this event. I think VP are starting to. I mean, before this event, I knew that they were going to restructure the way that they think and the way that they play their game. That's what Zoma offers and brings to the table. Electronic had a good event. That's another massive positive. But I think for me, a lot of it almost came down to almost individual form, because Norbert was okay, Flit was okay, Fame was okay, but they had very critical misses when they were going for these fishing opening fights that they were clearly designed to succeed in. And that's what really cost them when it came further down the stretch in this playoff bracket. I think given the ceiling that some of these players can hit, all it takes is for them to just be on, and the structure is already kind of there behind them for them to succeed. So I am really digging the way that VP looked at this event, just because we never actually got to see the effects of Zoma at the end of last season. So it's nice to see like tangible reasons to be excited about what the future could hold with the signing of that coach.
Yeah, I've got to say, it's one of the most horrible things for them to have been lined up with, is that G2, specifically in that moment. That Dust 2 game is one of the most individually brilliant performances the Kovac combo has ever put together. Between the two of them, they had 47 kills just on Dust 2. And that was, more than the entirety of Virtus Pro. I was watching the back of the game because I was out having a life, unfortunately, when the game was actually live. But I watched back the entire VOD afterwards to figure out how the hell this happened. How was G2 so brilliant on Dust 2? They weren't. Nico and Hunter were brilliant on Dust 2. I'm talking every time I switch to Hunter's POV and he just turns at the right moment, just sees two VP members. One's got his back to him, he sprays down two. It's just so free. And then Nico hits everything. I'm talking 4 bullets fired, 4 headshots on an M4A4, 2 guys drop. Like, just sweet perfection in terms of his mechanics. Like, they just dominated. And so, yeah, obviously going into that Ancient, which G2 is the only map they have figured out already, and that's just because they figured out we can get Marbs involved on the CT side. It's not Nuke. He doesn't have to sit at ramp and be basically AFK all game. We're unstoppable in this context. Going into that Ancient that G2 picked, it was unwinnable. So, no, really rough scenario for Virtus Pro. I'd still be sketchy about picking them, though. And that's because in their group, there's a massive unknown in Liquid who you can't really prep for. It's a change of IGL, a change of coach, change of lineup entirely. What the hell is Ultimate going to do on this roster? Like, you have no idea what you're facing, so that's a dangerous match to open up with. But then for the rest of it, remember, only 6 teams go through to the full final, so only 6 teams can score here. So they'd have to either finish first over Nada's Vincere, or make it through the single elim insta win-loss bracket thing they have set up for the second place teams. I think this is going to be dangerous for Virtus Pro. I'm still not a hater of the pick, obviously, in terms of the lineup, in terms of the way they've started to look. But I do think it's a dangerous time to be picking them.
Yeah, I actually don't doubt that the Liquid signing is probably going to do as much as the M80 signing in terms of, having bringing in Lake or bringing in Ultimate. I don't think either team is really going to succeed that hard off of it. Even though I picked M80 last time,
and they beat Complexity.
Yeah, they did beat Complexity. So
against a home team, like Lake was able to pop right off. Like, that was quite funny to watch.
Yeah, I just don't think it's unfortunately going to cook that well. I just think for me, VP have always kind of sat in the same place for such a long time, and I believe that system can work, but it's just so, even if you're playing to numbers all of the time, you're also conceding a lot of ground, and it was always just like close, tight games that they were losing or winning, and it's, that in and of itself doesn't feel like high percentage play, if that makes any sense. Like putting yourself in that scenario consistently almost feels like you're going to lose more often than not as well. So they're a weird team, but I'm happy they're moving away from that. But they've still got some remnants of game time, and they're still a T-side saving team.
Yeah, to a certain extent, they will forever still be James' team. But I did like, honestly, the Vitality series is the most positive thing that's they've done since Zomo came in. I mean, sure, the only other event we saw them with him was very short notice in terms of how much impact he could actually have.
What event was that? I don't think he was used for Blast, so...
No, he was behind them one other event. Unless he wasn't actually behind them, he was just signed and he was remote, but I'm convinced...
I think he was signed, but I don't think he actually attended any of the events that they went to at the end of the season.
Okay, so behind them in spirit, their coach officially, let's just say that then.
Yeah.
So he hadn't had that impact yet. But no, that Vitality series, they really did a number on Apex, really. Who has, I think it's become really apparent now that they need a second voice, they need other opinions, and they need not necessarily a firepower change, but it's more just a mentality change. They seem to really be missing Apex and Virtus Pro, or not Apex, Magisk, and Virtus Pro were able to make full use of all the problems that causes. And then that map 3, where no one played well for Vitality, really compounded it. So, unless you have more to add to VP's case, I'm going to move on to my second favourite. And I decided to stir the pot here. Get a bit controversial, because you'll notice the team that seems to always get my videos loads of comments haven't been picked yet. And they still haven't, because I've picked Astralis. I've played it smart, I think. My humble opinion, I'm a genius. And I've picked the team who have potentially the weakest group, and also are famous for making it through online. Not online, in studios, and not in front of crowds. This is where they shine. Astralis have an insane balance of firepower between an AWPing IGL who's putting up at big events like a 1.29 rating this year. They've got a rifler in Stown who has come into his own off stage, and a combo of riflers behind them who have either filled in roles perfectly or found themselves like comfortable ways to playmake in Yabi's exclusive case. I think this is a team who are incredibly threatening when they are comfortable. And to keep it short and sweet, my favourite to straight up win Group B. I don't think they have to make a lower bracket run after meeting whoever they meet in the upper final. I think they do just go straight through and top this group. They are going to be lethal.
You think they beat Vitality in the upper final?
Let's just say we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. That's okay. Yeah. For me, I'm not sure I have as much faith. I do like what Astralis have been doing, and I think that people, because of the fact that Astralis haven't been at loads of events, and yeah, I mean, they have been in attendance for like Pro League, and they did Chengdu, and they were at Yala Campus where they lost in the semis to the Mongols. Like, for me, these guys are good enough to make it out of this group, sure. I just worry that I don't know who the actual star is on this team.
I can tell you exactly how this is going to go, because I'm going to describe to you how it went in Pro League. They smashed at Pro League Eternal Fire, sure, whatever, given.
Yeah,
they then pretty comfortably, like the scorelines look close. My memory is of it not being particularly close. FaZe. And then they got a layup in 3D Max. They then played Liquid in the quarterfinal, who were a piece of piss. Let's put it that way. I mean, Liquid should not have even been there in the first place. Before going down to Vitality in a fairly close series, but importantly on a stage. This is a team who have done that again before then in Chengdu, where they topped their group by beating Steel Helmet, FaZe 2-0 without breaking a sweat, Virtus Pro 2-0 without breaking a sweat, and consistently the players at the top of the scoreboard are Stown and Yabi, and finally Device. That trio in a group setting without a crowd has been ridiculous this year.
I just think my problem with this team is that I just get... You know how we were dunking on Sashi last time? These guys just feel like obviously much better individual player Sashi, where there is only so much you're going to get output wise. Like, no one is ever going to be an actual superstar on this team. No one is, the tactics are going to be nice, solid, default to executes. You know, maybe they'll have a nice pace change once or twice a half, but I don't think I'm ever getting enough out of this team for them to be a proper contender for things. Yes, I'm not going to dispute you. They'll make it out of the group because they're group stage warriors. Fine.
Exactly.
But for me, long term, this Astralis team are just a weird stewing pot of just like, they're a Danish team that are more abnormally skilled than every other sort of Danish team that emerges out of that region. And I don't know. I still want like a proper superstar and maybe a proper in-game leader so that Device can be a superstar on this team. There's just not enough long term for me, but
I totally get why you're saying that. And if this was a universe where they had to play on stage to get me points, I would never pick them.
Okay,
but they don't have to. And that's the brilliant part about this. All they have to do is be good in a studio. And so they're a lock. They have to be a lock. I think this is going to go extraordinarily well. Especially with an opening matchup against Falcons. Come on.
I realized I was just venting there. I wasn't even really disputing. I was just venting.
You're just like, everything you've said is correct. Now let me complain about everything else. Nothing you've brought up. But okay, let's kind of veer onto the topic that we have to talk about. Because we have to talk about the favorites we didn't pick.
Yes.
Not all of them necessarily. You know, so not all of them are as interesting or get as many clicks as the others. But there is one who just made a grand final, had a very big, some would say controversial roster move happen. Neither one of us feels confident in picking them, despite their success. Now, for me, there's a couple of factors that kind of played in. It's what I saw from them in the grand final, what I saw from them in other matches as well, but most importantly, that grand final at the end. They are a team who are individually driven currently, and there's no other way about it. Like, they cannot outthink a team and outposition a team unless it's being done by individuals making plays. It is not a great strategy and not system. There's not some great wave of utility coming out of them. Like, there's nothing in the brain side of Counter-Strike is the way I want to put it. There's surely a fancy word I'm forgetting that is really convincing me. And then on top of that, I think their group has just enough spice to put them in second place. And that point, they then have to win to BO3 straight up. Their map pool currently is pretty shallow. I don't like the pick.
Yeah, I did consider switching my VP to G2 at certain stages. Yeah, and G2 for me, to be honest, I'm proud of them for making that final because, you know, they silenced a lot of doubt for some people about whether or not this team would even work, like, functionally. And I think there's real potential, and I do agree, you know, it is a very firepower driven team. But that can obviously work to a greater extent. For me, the thing that really let me down about this team was actually how poor they were playing on their CT sides. You know, whether or not that was Malbs and how static he was on certain maps, or whether that was Monacy just not being locked in whatsoever, switching to his knife or dropping weapons sometimes when going for saves, or, you know, just trying to rotate into places, seemed very unaware. This team didn't feel like it was fighting at full force, and it is new. Like, I get that it is new, but in that same vein, their T sides probably shouldn't have been as good as they were for a team that was new, because you do say, I don't disagree that there was a lot of individual playmaking that was happening on their T sides, but it did seem like they were gravitating into those late round scenarios. It wasn't as though we were just having like Nico slide up like B ramp on Ancient and getting 2 headshots, and then that was the round. We're on B. Like, they were starting to lean those directions. Like, they obviously mid-rounded into those choices. And then you would have, you know, sometimes those entries that would sort of just solidify things. I do think they're a bit more in flow. You know, they're not calling tactical Counter-Strike. They are clearly flow dependent. Like, hey, Snacks, what are we gonna do now? Like, I don't know. Let's see what we can get on B. I almost feel like that is probably what's happening in the comms, and then they're like, oh, hey, we killed 2 people. That's great. We win the round now. So yeah, G2 obviously have room to grow. I would like a more like, I don't know how much Taz is actually doing on the coaching end, but I really want a tactical or analyst or coach behind them, because I think it would do a lot to this team. And I just don't know that I get that currently. Like, the vibes seem good though. It's, that's great for G2 right now.
Very buddy, sure.
Yeah.
That's historically, I mean, the Swedish scene can attest, friendship only gets you so far. And if you don't start off winning when you're friends, it goes downhill real quick and you stop being friends. But I do want to address that, because on their T sides, the T sides that looked good were all on the same map. It was Ancient.
Yeah.
It was Ancient. And Ancient is the only map we really have seen a Snacks influence in the way they actually called. He, on GamerLegion, loved to just abuse A, because it is current meta to pretty much leave it empty in about 60% of your rounds, like your gun rounds. You're going to want to challenge for mid control, and by extension lane, you're going to leave it open. You can get post plants, and then on that point, it's a post plant. Most teams don't have like reverse set executes to throw against you. You're going to have to win some fights, and G2 are a lot better at it. Plus, they had some mighty individual play to help them out with that. But the problem is, when I saw them taken away from Ancient, away from Dust 2, and away from Mirage, the only maps I saw them really play well, they looked horrible. Like, their nuke T side was one of the worst I've ever witnessed. Like, the number of times multiple individuals were just caught walking in random, wide open areas, looking completely different directions with no plan, was ridiculous. Like, it happened outside at least 3 times, and it happened to them when they were actually trying to finish on the lower bomb site once. They did not have a plan, they had no structure, and they had no feeling to then vibe off, like the way they've been able to on other maps that they actually win. So Nuke was a big red flag. Their Inferno completely fell apart around the CT side, so I can't really lump that in the same category. But it was a similar feeling of, there is no plan once we've lost what we wanted to do initially. Like, Nico challenged down Banana once, got taken out by JL. He got flashed, shot in the head through a smoke that had been popped at the same time as the flash going off, because, Na'Vi have a real IGL and coach, so they can do that. And then they never went down Banana again, pretty much the rest of their CT side. They just abandoned it. They had no fallback, no special, like, top Banana retake to try, no other plans on how to assert control over that part of the map. And so they just left it and hoped they could play out the bomb sites. And this was not Dust 2 against VP. They couldn't just get a miracle every time a bomb site was attacked. So there was a very, like, clear lack of depth to what they had going on. And a part of that is just the novelty of it all. But I'm convinced as well as you are that they are lacking a tactical mind behind the scenes, and potentially even on the server all the time.
Yeah, no, I mean, even watching through, I mean, I say watching, I was sporadically watching and listening mainly to the way things were developing on Inferno. It's just like seeing players get caught off at opening 15-20 seconds exchanges on that map when they were on CT side was just, I don't know, it's weird for me to see stuff like that. I feel almost like they had a completely poor understanding of how Na'Vi were even going to approach it. Like they had no forward thinking, almost like the 2 moves ahead. Oh, if we play like this, our opponent is going to try and do this, and we'll adapt to change it like this. I almost feel like there's not even that thought process that's being engaged at the minute. So, this didn't feel like a great. It was a good showcase for G2 in terms of like what their individual ceilings could be, but tactically this team has a lot to develop on. So,
100%.
We just have to wait.
We do, and my biggest praise for them is that they were able to make Ancient in such a short amount of time a map they could really lean on.
Sure.
As in, not just depend on pure individuals, actually have an idea of how they were going to approach it. That was fairly impressive, the way they actually executed and got Malbs MD involved.
It didn't look like that when they played the Mongols, to be fair. So they had to learn pretty quickly. Yeah.
It was a rough start. Like, they still won that map, but it wasn't as pretty as you'd hoped. I mean, to be fair, it's a Mongols like specialty. Mongols did pick it. You'd expect Mongols to be fairly solid, but no, it's important to me that they do find more ways of getting Mobs MD involved, because if you are not going to be that deep, you need to be strong. Like, if you're going to be dumb, you got to be tough, and Mobs MD is a part of that toughness. So that's going to be a big part of their game plan going forward. Other favourites that we haven't touched on. Who's a key one that I think we need to look at? Yeah, we're going to ignore complexity again for this show. We're going to quickly touch on vitality.
Sure. We're not talking about FaZe, because they look bad as well.
Oh, we do need to talk about FaZe. I'm so used to them just being part of our picks that I didn't even consider them. Let's start with vitality, though.
Sure.
What's your prognosis?
I mean, it's even the same thing I said when we were talking through it with Hawker. Is that I just don't know that we are having proper consistency from Flames and Spinks as like these star fighter type players, even if Spinks is going to be more of a late round fighter as opposed to Flames in early rounds. Also, I don't think we saw the role changes we were really hoping for in terms of like CT positions and how things are going to rejig on the vitality side of things.
No, there was absolutely no change on that side of things.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, they're just very stagnant. Like I didn't come into this event thinking that we are going to see Vitality just be the same team that came out of the end of last season, but that's almost what we got. Even though ZywOo, I think, was actually playing ZywOo level, I just don't think the rest of the team was really there.
Yeah, ZywOo was there for most of it. He then had he had a shocker on basically their last two maps. I think Inferno, his rating looks nice, and he got 20 kills, but watching it, he took a lot of completely empty deaths. I think his cast might even reflect that if I check the numbers. I don't remember them, but he took a lot of deaths that were just flat out untradeable. He's solo in Banana. Yeah, 60% KAST for a man with 20 kills. That's a lot of solo deaths that are completely isolated and untouchable. And I think that was a problem in their Inferno. I do think a part of it was him trying to activate sort of like hero mode. Like, I've got to do something. No one else really is. But it was an issue that just compounds with the other problems they already have. And that's something I have to keep saying. He's
maybe the only one that Apex won't yell at.
Yeah, well, to be fair, rightly so in most cases. Yeah. I think on Dust 2 he could have done with a slap in the face because he missed a lot of easy shots and never got into the game. But no, at that point he didn't deserve it. He just had to try to do something and it just wasn't the right thing. I think Flames... I still think Flames is the most misused part of their defense. Because on offense, I mean, his rating is almost entirely built on his T-side play. Like, he is really good on their T-side. He's one of the only players who can find any impact with consistency when they're on offense. And I think that's credit to Flames' like sharpness, his ability to entry path effectively, dodge flashes. Like, he does all of that really well. So I've been a big fan of Flames' T-side. Shit on CT side, yeah, he's not built for anchor spots, but Apex is even less so. Like, I think it's just an unsolvable dilemma in that sense. Like, you can't really fix it. So you have to consider who's worth cutting at the end of the day, like, and how do you even want to approach cuts if you're going to make them? Like, what are you going to change up?
I mean, they'll probably try and cut Messi and get an aggressive player. That'd probably be the type of fix that
aggressive player.
Well, they'd have to get an aggressive player. Yeah, they'd have to get an aggressive player that Apex can, like, I don't know. Basically, your anchor players aren't going to be tested as much if you are winning rounds before their anchor players are even put into a situation where they have a fight,
the
right?
Spirit effect, right?
Yeah. So for me, like, I feel like they'd almost want Messi to do more on this team, which is, I don't know. I thought that was what he came to the realization of at Dallas, and it doesn't seem to have really had a positive influence on him. Like this.
No.
In that Virtus Pro game, he did get abused actually quite a bit, and very frequently didn't come away with the one kill that he was sort of saying that he needs to fight for. It's not a good look, unfortunately, for the Merryman. As much as I think he can still grow, I don't think that's what Vitality have the time for.
What's crazy is that Messi ends the event with a positive CT rating just because of how well. But he was able to play against M80 realistically.
And his T rating is also just like
T rating's in the toilet. Like, it's a problem. I do think, as much as I've rooted for Messi and wanted Messi and like felt they could have kept him for all this time, the issues they have, I just don't think are solved without making a roster move, and I can't find a good justification for any other ones. I do still think Spinks needs to show up on the stages to like rejoin the conversation of elite riflers, because he's out of it in my eyes. Like, he's not an elite rifler right now. He's a decent one who gets fairly favorable positions, but doesn't make anywhere near the amount of impact that he has to, given his responsibilities.
He's not touching a top 10, where he was top 5 last year, as far as I'm aware.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think it was top 5 last year. And
last year they were great. He was number 5. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not even putting him in a top 10 at the minute, and I'd be surprised if many people were putting him even in the top 20. Maybe he'll squeak through. Maybe he'll just barely squeak through.
Yeah, if they're not winning events, it's kind of hard to justify putting him in the top 20. Like, with just off, if you're doing a HLTV one, just off the rating, off the eye test, if you're a neutral, like, it's not been a great year for him.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
we talk about FaZe. Yeah, we do. We kind of have to.
Yeah, they suck.
Complex and nuanced analysis today, guys. They just suck.
I don't know what happens with FaZe. I really thought they were going to come into this event with almost like a breath of fresh air to them, because they were doing a lot last season. They were constantly traveling. They're making it to a lot of finals. Even like the break from Christmas into the new year for them was probably still quite stressful or quite strenuous in terms of just like the amount of work they had to push through. But man, it's almost sad seeing how Rops is performing individually on this team. I feel like this guy has lost confidence completely in his individual game. I even saw this, the post about how he hates how things feel on CS2 at the minute, and he's talking with the devs about why don't we bring 128 tick back and not focus on sub tick, on the back end while we're playing all these tournaments and things like that. Where before, Rops was very much a proponent of seeing how things develop and seeing how things build. And I personally think hit registry feels pretty damn good on CS2 at the moment, but movement still shit. Getting shot around corners slightly, especially when other opponents have high ping, still feels shit. But on LAN, I wouldn't think that's as noticeable. So I'm kind of surprised it's come to fruition like this, because Rops is less aggressive, he's less confident in his duels, he's taking less risks, and he's not getting rewarded for the way that he was able to play and has been able to play throughout a lot of his career. He's just very sussed out because people are being so much more aggressive. You will have less time on lurks. That's actually a big reason I think lurkers are struggling at the moment individually, is that the acceleration for retakes or for fights, everybody's swinging things. And so you have less time to sort of think through how the positions are going to develop sort of more naturally like before. And Rops is just like totally, I don't know, he's just totally off rhythm for me on this team, which I don't think FaZe can be successful without him. So
yeah, it's a rough team to watch right now, because Brokey, he's kind of found a new level this year where his rifle core has not been up to the challenge. Basically, he mostly has been, and that's been one of their most important elements to consistently having even the top fours, the grand final runs, like the last of their title wins. That's been a lot about Brokey. Even Frozen has struggled to find the same peaks. So I think, yes, the primary issue is Rops. I just felt like in a lot of series I watched, the entire team fell flat. Like when they lost their actual elimination game with Na'Vi, Karrigan was the only one who seemed capable of making a play. Like on Mirage especially, like without Karrigan's multi-kills, they probably lose that map comfortably. It's 13-11. They lose it like 13-9, 13-8, which for a FaZe team who are supposed to be stacked with stars is very disappointing. They still have good calls. They still have a decent approach to the game. I don't think there's too much of a problem on that side of things. It does very much come down to finding Rops' performances again. And by the sounds of what I'm hearing, it might take a long while longer, like a lot of time before he's actually back up to, if he ever comes back to the player he was towards the end of Go.
It's a problem with individual pace for me because uh, even the playmaking that you're talking about for Karrigan, you wouldn't have seen that as much when they were playing with twists. And Frozen, I thought, could fulfill those types of roles, but it almost feels like he's fallen back into like the security of I am good. I am going to play my spot and I'm going to do what I think is best in these moments, as opposed to what is going to put my team in a winning position. Um, and while Rops is slowed down or is not being as aggressive, Frozen is being a little bit more comfortable. I worry that Karrigan is doing that purely out of necessity because no one else wants to sort of intuitively make those types of decisions. Like that is not what they are comfortable doing, even though they could mechanically fulfill those roles. We talk a lot about roles, but I think the revelation we're coming to, and I think it's always kind of been the case, is actually it's personalities that has to be sort of managed to make those types of choices. You have to have an ego if you're going to go for aggressive plays. You can't be the most cerebral player where you're in your own head and be hyper aggressive at the same time. They almost don't line up with each other. So yeah, for FaZe, it's weirdly like it's a role dynamic, I think, to a certain degree, but also how these players that I think are actually very traditionally versatile throughout their careers, how they adapt to actually fix this problem. Because at the moment, I'm just seeing a lot of the same types of plays that are comfortable and not a lot of actual success from those spots anymore. Like the meta has developed to be more accelerated, more aggressive, and you have to be there with that. Otherwise, you're getting kind of fall behind.
Yeah, we'll see how they address it if they find a solution. I'm still thinking this team is good as is. If I do have to make a change in the future, it depends on how things go in the next 3 months, because I'm giving them at least another 3 months, potentially this entire season, before I start demanding a big change. Because roster-wise, it should be fine.
Yeah, they're easily still a top 5 team. Like for me, you want more out of a team like this, because I think Brokey and Rain are actually performing above expectations given the sort of name brand value, and like they've been good on FaZe for quite a long time, but they're actually having a lot more output than you would sometimes expect, and the more talked about, the more fan favorited stars are the ones that are kind of shying away. So like I want the team to succeed, because these both Rops and Frozen are the FPL player's dream. Like those guys genuinely developed in that system, made it to a pro team, and then were superstars basically. Like that is every delusional face it player's like fantasy. Those guys are living it. So
yeah,
they're a good talisman for the scene, I think.
Yeah, we'll wait and see, but I don't think this is a great event to be picking them. Their group is it's interesting because it's also the group with G2. I do think those two, I don't know, if we see the same phase individually, it's probably not going to be a great game for them.
That'll be an interesting game.
Yeah, it's definitely a team we're going to be following with intensity in these coming months. But that's enough about favourites. Let's talk about the maligned teams, the underdogs, the ones who are never quite given a chance but have to punch up. I think we've got some interesting picks here to discuss, and you've gone with, as your first pick, well, one of your favourites again, I think.
One of my favorites. Yeah, I've not picked them for a while, to be fair, because they've been kind of bad for quite a while. And I've gone with Berlin International Gaming, the BIG. They have just picked up Rigon, and I cannot tell you how excited I am for this. One, they've got a naturally more aggressive, a little more boneheaded. He wasn't the most boneheaded on that Bad News Eagles team, but a little bit more than the traditional German player that you could have within the scene. And he will provide a lot of space and opportunities for players like JDC and Crimbo, who have already been doing God's work on this roster. They have been the big reason why Big have not completely fallen out of the top 30, in my opinion, that they probably deserve to be. But those guys are actually insane. And then you've got Tabson and Searson that have been trucking on. Tabson can have some good maps, but Searson, I don't know. They were really hoping that they could re-engage in some awkward honeymoon just saying, "Hey, let's bring Searson back for the good old times. He was really good back in those days, wasn't he?" And they've seen past the rose-tinted glasses and are now stuck with him because they shipped off Mantu and they haven't found a good alternative German offer. So there they sit with him on the AWP. So they need a good rifling core, and I think with Rigon, it actually provides quite a lot of extra room so that maybe Searson can operate, and maybe tabseN can be a bit more mischievous.
Your Big have there's two moves really that have changed, I think, a lot of people's interest. So firstly, yes, Rigon coming in, speaking his Swiss German, which is just German. So they're still a German-speaking side. And I'm going to be, fascinated to see how he plays, because I've always been processes I've followed since Big Academy. And he's had really good series with Big, but he's also had a lot of very quiet, disappointing ones where he's clearly not been just cocky enough to play his roles. And that's why I think Rigon is the perfect player, because, come on, talk about a guy who's willing to make the play if he feels he's right. If he just delusionally decides this is the right play, he's going to go for it pretty much every time. It's at times a problem, but in this context, definitely something you want from a team who's typically going to be so structured and safe. They need that element. So I think Rigon is a great signing. And the other part of this is Toby coming back. He's not officially listed as the coach yet. Yeah, because he's just been signed as performance coach. But the reason a lot of people, primarily Maui Snake, the ultimate Big fanboy, the man who knows the entire team's history back to its origins, I'm sure, get so excited for this specific re-edition is because back when he was their primary coach is when they had their best moments. They won events online, and it's also when Searson played his best CS. So even though, because Searson, we used to joke about it, like, oh, he's the online god. Like on LAN, he probably isn't as good, but online, during that period especially, he was a monster. Well, another part of it is that Toby was there. And when he's not been on the team and they have gone back to playing online, there hasn't been a magical return of the online Searson god. So potentially this is a move to re-unlock that hidden talent that Searson might still have. So that's the two-part idea. There is positives to bring out of their period prior to this. They have won series in big events. It hasn't been a complete zero for them across the board. They haven't been going to events finishing dead last. They haven't been that shockingly bad. They've picked up wins against Virtus Pro in Dallas. They beat Heroic at Pro League. They've had some fairly okay results. It's just not been convincing in any sense. But I think you found the perfect time to pick them. I just think you've picked them in one of the toughest groups they could have hoped for. They've got to, if they want to finish first and go straight through, they have to outdo Na'Vi, VP, and the new Liquid. And then going out in second place, they'd have to place the second place of, I believe, Group B? No, Group A, which is, I think at that point, potentially a coin flip matchup. They have to beat probably Heroic.
Or OG or something, yeah.
Or OG or Cole, are the other two. I'm going to be honest, my money's on Heroic out of that group. So it's going to be a difficult run just to get to second. Then they still have to win another tough series. So it's a tough time to have picked them. But I do think they're a team who should be on the rise coming through now.
Yeah, I won't pretend any of my picks, I looked at any of the groups for it. I saw what I could pick from favorites or underdogs, and I'm like, yeah, I could back this team. And I have not thought very strategically. Don't do what I did. But yeah, no, I do think down the road this will be a positive move for Big, because you actually bring in a star player that I think elevated that Bad News Eagles team to be actually relevant in the first place. And I think he actually is going to bring Big to a very similar but better level, because there's actually more strategy and structure behind Big than the Bad News Eagles could even hope to build, because they did try, and it was bad. It was really bad.
It wasn't for them, was it?
Yeah. It's we want to try and be better. And they did that, and they got worse, in fact. So
yeah, it's like watching props do ballet. It just wasn't for them. As much as they can be taught, as much as they might study and try, certain things are just not built for, and they really weren't built for that.
Stiff acting.
So no, not expecting Big to... Personally, I'm not expecting them to go far, but we'll be interested to see how they do. This is going to be an exciting time for them, and potentially they can return to their position they had for a while when they were a super tactical side with like maybe Xantares, like that sort of period where they were like the guardians of top 10. Like if you could beat Big in a best of 3 at LAN, you could be accepted as a top 10 team. Like
Sure.
Big were just like hard stuck 11th, keeping every like wannabe pretender away. That could be a good spot for them to find as they try to build onwards. But they do have the talent potentially to go further.
Virtus.pro have been occupying that. They've been holding that flag for them, in the interim. So while VP level up, Big can go back to being the gatekeeper team.
That'd be cool. Right. I've picked, an interesting underdog here. A lot of this is predicated on a limited sample size of mostly small cups and online play. The reason I'm excited for this roster. Not even small cups they've won, but just the way they've played out these small cups has made me believe in NIP. Now, I was critical of them just because of the way they were building their roster. Sticking with Alex, I thought was a bit of a risk. And then they started signing players. And they promoted Maxter officially, and I was like, oh, yeah, sick. He's a legit talent. For once, NIP haven't screwed themselves out of their own academy piece. Like, they've actually brought him into the main squad, and he's going to be amazing. Wrinkle, coming in for Hetrick, has been such a relief. It's like coming inside after it's been 35 degrees, muggy, and you walk into a room with air conditioning. You're like, oh, maybe it's a bit too much, but it's the right kind of too much. Like, he is way less baity, far more active, far more flair on display, just round to round. He's an AWPer, and it shows. Like Hetrick, even though he has found like a new sort of lease on life in bait under the weird leadership of NPL, that's a topic for a video I'm still writing. But Wrinkle has been fantastic, and he makes this side look like they should be just settled tier 1. Like, when you talk about bringing in young players like Isaac, it is kind of rough. You feel like, oh, it's just the NIP brand keeping them away from like the OG status of the world, where you're like, you're here, but you're not really there. This team has been amazing. Since they put them together, they've managed to win games against New Fnatic, BO1s against Astralis Heroic and Ents, BO3 against Furia, give Mongols one hell of a match in a BO3 on Mongols' home turf. Not home turf, this was the gravel of Compass, not the other one. But at an event, Mongols end up winning. Just got my tournament's muddled there. But no, they have looked much, much stronger than we ever saw them before. And the biggest influence has been the level of play of Wrinkle, but also their ability to integrate this rifle core into a really effective system. It was the Furia roster we all thought was bad, but they made them look just illegitimate, like completely.
Yeah. It actually made them look
outclassed. Bad. They made them look bad in a tier 2 event, which is saying something. So NIP, it's a bit of a pipe dream to see them make it out. They have a fairly tough group, but I think there's enough uncertainty in both the group and the potential second place finisher they'd have to play in the single elim for me to take a risk on them. G2 are far from a finished product. FaZe are looking flat. Cloud9 are completely nothing at this point. We've never seen them play. So I think there's a good chance they can make it through this group. And if they do end up in a second place game, I think they've got a puncher's chance.
Yeah, just shout out to BetBoom, Eternal Fire, Fnatic, Complexity for making that Furia team with Kai look good. And NIP didn't do that. I don't dislike the NIP move, or I guess pick in this regard. I think the surprise for me is just how nobody seems to be that bad on this NIP team.
All the players seem to be in the right roles, right?
Yeah. When they're holding spots on CT sides in particular, I don't see players just get completely overwhelmed consistently in spots. Maybe they'll have a round where they don't get a kill, but then the next round they'll get 1 or maybe even 2 and make up for sort of lost time. They play everybody plays their spots quite well. I do think you're right. Wrinkle is the one that makes this team look legitimate, but the rifle core is good, but not exceptional. I think they are fighting above their pedigree just in terms of like sheer quality of like their floor right now looks really, really solid. I don't think I've seen a ceiling from many of the players as of yet, and I think the Maxter signing is a little too raw, too new, and he's a younger player, so he has time to grow. But when you still got players like Rez on this team, are we like, is there still hope that this guy can be a star player? Because he's not at the moment. I don't think there is a proper star on this team outside of Wrinkle.
Yeah, I have some thoughts on that, because obviously, yes, Wrinkle's the number one guy on this roster. He's going to make them tick. I think the obvious way you have to structure this roster, or at least think about it if you're a member of it, is your second star is going to be Maxter going forward.
It should be, yeah.
And that Rez, he doesn't have to be a super impactful player. He doesn't have to be as good as we needed him to be 5 years ago on NIP. We just need to be like a third star, a solid, consistent piece who's going to be more aggressive. He's going to be part of a sort of like him and Alex are going to be taking more opening duels. I mean, I know Wrinkle takes tons on his AWP because, again, he makes this team tick. But they are also going to be on the more entry side of things. I think they just have to be solid. They need to be like the Carrigan Rain of this team. They don't need to be the top-end talent. They don't need to be super impactful. Isaac is going to have to find, I think, his moments to get his multis. I think that's going to be also another question mark. But no, the second star should be Maxter. That's what they're building towards. And I think he has the talent. And honestly, so far, he's shown a lot of poise. So I'm pretty confident.
I think it's just a very good fundamentals team to watch, I think, right now. Like, spacing on trades is good from what I was able to watch. And they're not inactive. They don't sit back when they know they have to make plays. They do make them. It's just a little bit more inconsistent in terms of like what kind of production you get out of that spot, whether or not they're willing to make that play individually or whether that has to be like a 2 or 3 man push. I think they've been opting for the former, or for the latter, sorry. And yeah, I think this team has a lot of room to grow. They are, I think, a good definitive underdog for this tournament, so I don't discredit them at all. I'm going to transition that into our next team, a team that have been not playing with their full roster, but they kicked a guy and then they signed a new one, and then he couldn't actually go to the next tournament at the end of the season, so they're like, hey, guy we just kicked, can you come back? Yeah, you guessed it, it's Heroic. They have obviously signed Dexter as of late, and Dexter has not been bad individually. He has not been that poor on the AWP. He's still missing shots where he probably, old Dexter would have hit him, but he's also still got a bit of Dexter flair where, yeah, I might have missed that shot, but I'm a re-peek you from a different angle and kill you the second time. They've got a lot of, I think they actually have a decent amount of playmaking now on this team, between Nerds, between Dexter, between Tess's. These guys can open rounds. Hell, even Kixan with the way that he plays some occasionally. I think more based off of spawns than anything. I think this Heroic team have quite a lot of firepower. Shish and Tessus are obviously the big reasons why I'm still interested in this team, because as a duo, they have been keeping this roster afloat. I don't think Nerds has really been cutting it in terms of his level of impact. He's still putting up numbers. He's still getting kills. But there's quite a lot of empty calories in like failed retake attempts or save attempts, and hell, I'm sure if you look up the style anti-ecos, it's probably up there as well. So for me, yeah, this team actually made a very good roster move towards the end of the season. It's just a shame they actually weren't able to make use of it and properly build with him. I think Heroic are going to do well at this event. I haven't hated the way that kicks in Coles either. He's a little bit more loose, but I like that for Dexter in particular. I think he likes loose.
Yeah, so Dexter's an interesting one because talent undeniable. Personality does come with it, though, and that's been the problem in previous teams. Here we've seen them play one event with him. It was a series of best of ones. And it's actually perfectly. He goes from his worst map as the first one to his best map as the last one. If there was ever a clearer sign of a player who just needs to get his reps in and get back to playing competitive Counter-Strike, it's that. He's still got it in him. He just needs to, actually spread his legs and stretch his legs.
Yep.
Mixed metaphors there.
Spread his wings.
Spread his wings or stretch his legs, but don't mix those metaphors. Not in that combination, at least. But yeah, he ended that Yalla Compass event with a 22 kill performance against Ents, top frag, top rating, after starting the event abysmally against Astralis. So there's positive signs for the Dexter signing. And yes, of course, Tesses, Shush have been, as a duo, the most floor raiser a pair of players can be. They've just kept this team going, despite, as you said, Nertz getting his empty numbers, but no real tangible impact. Anyone who's actually watched the games knows this isn't an acceptable level of play for a star rifler. He has been subpar of late, and they've needed Shush, they've needed Tesses as well, has been really impactful in the spots you'd hope Nertz would be. So Tesses has been great for that. And if they can actually show up at this event and just have Dexter playing 95% of what we saw in that last map they played at Yalla, they are going to be lethal. They are going to be terrifying. If you are in that group, your Spirit, and you might get a slow start from Donk, he might not be able to replicate his form from the first 3-4 months of the year. He might end up playing a little more like he did at EWC, where he was.
That would be the hope.
A combination of unlucky and, in a couple of cases, bad.
A little bad, yeah.
A little bad. Yeah, Heroic's a really dangerous team for you to face. They have fraggers in a lot of positions. And so, yeah, I'm liking this Heroic lineup, how they've built it. I still think to be back to top 6 sort of level, they need to not be relying on floor raisers. They need to have their ceiling raiser, Nertz, in theory, stepping up. But if we get Superstar Dexter back, at least star level Dexter back, they may not even need Nertz. So that's going to be a fascinating tale to follow. And I think that's a great pick, honestly. They've got a great chance of, honestly, upsetting their group. And then the second place playoff, it'll probably be against a Big or someone else. So either way, a good chance for them, I think, to go through.
Just to touch on Nertz one more time. It's not like I do say he gets empty calories, and I do think that is the case to a certain degree. But I describe him more as a win more player, where a lot of the early round or mid round impact has already been done, and Nertz will finish off what has been started already. I don't think he's someone that messes up when they have advantages. He doesn't mess up when they're in 3v3s as a star player. That is a consistency I want, but he is not also bringing them into those scenarios. He's not, I think when they have poor positioning, he is not fishing for better spots and information for the rest of the team. For me, that is more the tangible level of impact, where other players are doing more to make it his job easier. And I guess that is how you're supposed to structure it sometimes for star players. But I think a lot of those players have kind of gone as unsung to the reason why Nertz may have good numbers in a series, is that he's basically being set up for a lot of that. And so, to me, you could almost put an in-game leader in some of those spots, and they'd almost still be able to find that success. So it's kind of not where I want Nertz within the pack. I want more out of him. I think he can give more. So
yeah, the empty calorie comparison just is so perfect when you look at his impact of 0.88 at their last event, despite a 1.06 rating on paper looking nice. As soon as you dig up, you're like, ooh, not a lot of multis in there, not a lot of openers. It's a very steady diet of late round singles that don't do a lot for winning games. So yeah, one to keep an eye on, but overall Heroic's still dangerous. I've gone for, okay, this is a classic me pick.
This was a weird one for me, I won't lie.
So I have a podcast every Sunday. Some of y'all might watch it. Sure, a lot of you do. And I made some claims about, firstly, Snacks being signed up to G2 and what he was actually doing on GamerLegion. I then made a prediction that my pick, GamerLegion, would outperform G2 in Shanghai. Ridiculous, I know. Just on the basis of the names in the team, borderline idiotic, but that's why I'm here. To make outlandish claims and somehow convince you that I'm right. I mean, none of you ever do, believe me. Rarely does anyone agree with me, but I do think I've got a case here. Now, first off, talent-wise, there is a lot of it on this team. It's very raw, it's very undeveloped, very unpolished, but mechanically this team is there. They're not going to be lagging behind at this event. No one's going to be missing sprays or just stepping out into dumb fights and then not being able to control their M4, just like a loose ghost buster, like, what are they called? Ray gun, pack, whatever. I'm not 45. But anyway, we've all seen the scenes.
Okay.
The old people will know what I'm referring to. There's going to be a lot of mechanical proficiency on this team. They also have balanced out their roster with roles that make sense to me. No longer are they reliant on 2014 era snacks type of player outside. They on Nuke, like for one big example that always comes up. They're going to have their star players playing star roles more consistently. They also, coming into this event, will have a new IGL who immediately has synergy with Ash in the way he approaches the game. And they, in their opening matchup, are GamerLegion. They are notorious for having the best prepped opening games of any underdog. So, combine their natural gifts, their incredible coaching, an IGL who fits their philosophy, and the fact that Vitality have looked rather dull of late. This is an opening upset waiting to happen. After that, come what may. But I think that they have a very surprisingly good chance of going out of this group in second place, facing up with maybe a rundown phase.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say your Astralis pick. No,
it's B and C are facing each other in the second place.
So you're saying they beat Vitality, lose to Astralis, and then
beat Vitality again.
Well,
it's happened before. They've had their prep against their opening matchup, played their opening matchup again, and the same prep bloody worked because it's within the space of a day and a half. Who's going to have changed their entire approach to their maps? Not Vitality. They didn't do it over the entire break. They're not going to do it now. So this is the team I'm taking a massive gamble on. Could I have picked Liquid? Sure. But I think that's a bigger risk given that they have a harder group and, at this point, a more chaotic structure. I could have picked Falcons. But I'm sorry, have you got faith in Falcons? Has anyone got faith in Falcons? Like, on this planet? I don't think so. So this is a risk, but it's a one I can justify to myself.
Okay. Yeah, I don't hate it. Mainly because we've given a lot of credence to Ash in, like, the way that he's kept the team not kind of barreling out of control, given that he's gone now through... This will be his third in-game leader, or fourth? Actually, no. Since he's been with GamerLegion, there's probably been like 5 or 6 in-game leaders that he's actually gone through. But since the teams have been successful, his third one, I guess, that has changed. Oh, wait, no, they had Neelan as well, didn't they, for a little bit?
Very briefly had Neelan. So he's had like Adam...
Or...
he had Adam, he had...
So since they were successful, Shuhei, Neelan...
Snacks. Now ZTR.
ZTR. So this will be the fourth one. So... yeah, shout out to him and the support staff at GamerLegion. They're doing a good job over there. Yeah, I kind of hate that I see what you're talking about is my problem. I can't... I still don't think it's going to happen. Like, they actually will... I think they will come up with a good game plan, but I think they're still going to lose, like, 13-9 or something in their 2 games. I think I'll actually make that call, 13-9, 13-8 or something in their best of 3 against Vitality. I do think they are just going to get diffed. even if like structurally the game plan might work or make sense, I think the players are going to play ahead of Util and just fight them. Because I think as well, people have to clue themselves into the fact that GamerLegion are a team that do love to do that heavy prep. They kind of had as many upsets as they've had throughout that organization's history to not be respected for such. So I'd be very surprised if Vitality got caught just like falling into old tendencies. I actually wouldn't be surprised if Vitality just went in like full chaos and just ran at them for the opening like 8 rounds of each game, just to be different, you know?
Yeah, maybe. But I don't know. This is a GamerLegion that at Pro League, you know,
Yeah,
their prep
yeah.
was solid. They got out of the group. They lost 2 out of VP, but 13-11, 13-11 with Snacks as your IGL and do Slend, like these players, they've now gotten, like, this is before they even had Flammus on the roster. So honestly, for my money, they're mechanically even stronger now. And I think this is, yeah, it's a great time to pick them to make another silly upset run. The kind of run that makes us then the next event go, they're not going to do enough. You know, the next time we see them might be at an actual elimination type event where we can't justify picking them just because they'll make it out of groups. And, you know, have to make the comments of like, yeah, they do lack a bit of this, a bit of that. But this specific style of event, I think it's a really interesting format for them.
Yeah, I also think, you know, while I might have been down on GamerLegion at one point, you know, I used to love ragging on GamerLegion because I always thought they had to make moves. They have been active in making moves,
Yeah,
and this time they're actually and this time they're actually in a position where they have had a move forced from them again. You know, where like Shuhei and Imo were taken from the roster. Now it's Snacks, who, you know, maybe we didn't have a lot of credence given to him as like an individual caller, but a guy that could fish for his own kills, did actually a lot of role adaptations on this GamerLegion team. For me, you know, this is one of the few roster moves that they've had to make that, yeah, I do agree. You know, it kind of lines up stylistically with the guy they've picked up in Snacks' stead. So I hate that I could see your point here. I won't pretend like I will believe in it, but there is a crafted world out there.
Yeah, that's all I'm trying to do. When I'm talking about these wild underdog picks, I'm just trying to just get that little acceptance that maybe I've got a point. Maybe there's an idea here. He's cooking something. Like, I might not want to eat it at the end of the day, but I get what he's trying to do. And that's all I want to hear. Is like, yeah, this is not a completely idiotic pick.
And listen, my tendency to like stray towards the CIS teams, I'm just sad we didn't talk about Cloud9 because
that was my coin flip. Remember, I did message you.
Yeah,
like, I'm torn. And the other one I considered picking was Liquid, Cloud9, 2 new rosters. And Cloud9, I end up not picking them because I feel like IC's fool's gold.
Sure.
And as much as I love Heavy God, you still have Axile on the roster. Inters doesn't move the needle much. Like, he's just a fine role player. And Boomich, again, the needle doesn't budge. Like, I'm like, yeah, Boomich is cool, but doesn't move them away from being like 16th. Like, that's cool. I need to believe in Icy, I think, for me to believe in this roster, and I need to believe that Axel will come back into form. I just personally didn't, so I thought, instead of taking a shot on them when they have to potentially face teams who are just up and running and fragging, I'm better off placing my bet somewhere else, just for this event. I don't know, like, maybe you have more faith in them than I do, like, maybe you believe in Axel, but I struggle. To
be honest, I believe in the Heavy God, and as much as I am with you. I think Icy is way overblown. I actually think Heavy God is going to just be sick on this team. So I think that actually could be enough to cause at least one upset within this group. But I'll be honest, I haven't really inspected their group. Oh, they play FaZe, and they have G2 NIP.
Yeah, that's why I think it's rough for them, because they don't face teams massively in flux. Like, G2 is the only exception, but G2's going to outfrag them, so they can't really abuse that. So
and NIP are, I think, too
settled.
Yeah. I think I was going to say sound, but settled is a better word for that.
Yeah, so you see where the logic is.
Sure,
and then Liquid, we have to talk about them a bit just because they are a big name. Like, they are Liquid, they are Team Liquid, they are NA's... somehow
JKS.
NA's last hope.
Ultimate.
They've now got JKS, everyone's favorite pretty boy. Emo pretty boy, of course, as the rumor or the story goes, but I don't really care for that. I do think this team, it's lacking a caller that makes any sense to me, and I don't know how they're going to look. That's the big problem I have. I have no clue how any of this is going to pan out. Like, what's the structure going to look like? How the role's going to adjust? Who's going to be like the secondary voice? Is it going to be Yakindar again? Is that really? Are we going to retread like old paths? Is Ultimate going to look even competent, because I've not seen a whole lot of promise from him personally in terms of his advanced game. His mechanics are good, but can he adapt to this level of play? I have too many questions to ever believe in it.
Also, twist calling, right?
That's
so,
what we've understood. It's not been officially released, I don't think, but that's pretty much what's intimated.
Whatever happened to the Ikindar calling, you know? I'd if
You couldn't
Ikindar is
do
going
it.
to be, I know, but if Ikindar is not going to be like a big player on this team, then I think you almost have to slot into in-game leading back again, just so that it doesn't burden twists with that. Um, yeah, the team is just weird because it's more the philosophy of how this team is going to operate. Like, I actually don't hate the pieces. Even Ultimate, I'm sure he's going to be okay, but I just don't know how they're going to look on T sides, and that really worries me for a team that actually has some great T side players that, you know, just put a little bit of structure around them and you're living, you know, whether that's Twists or your Kindar or Naf in some of the mid rounds. You know, I think they've got enough there already. I just I need to know how it's all gonna work together. So that's why I wouldn't pick him. That's why I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole right now. Kind of same logic, I guess, applied to G2 when we saw them at Esports World Cup. But this move feels worse than the G2 one that ever did for me.
For obvious reasons. Like,
yeah,
we're not talking about Nico, Manasi, Malbs, players we've seen put up like not just good but incredible performances this same year. We're talking about players who've had, Nas been good. Twist has had some of his best form, but his career best form isn't Nico peak. It's not Manasi's level. It's not even the levels we see on Malbs. Like, he's just inherently not that high of a peaker. So I do think that it's a rather timid looking roster in terms of its threat level.
A lukewarm liquid.
Yeah. Like a tea you've forgotten about for too long.
Sure.
But yeah, who's the other underdogs? Do we need to talk about the others, or can we wrap this up? I don't feel like OG merit much conversation with Thomas standing in.
Yeah,
they're going to be Thomas. Trash. Like, cool, nice work, Soldier. I mean, with 5W, it looked like you had something going until you got scammed and broke up. But this just ain't it. So, not much point.
Yep.
And then Falcons. Do you have any faith left in the Falcons project right now, as it stands?
Nope.
Cool. Let's leave it at that then. There's not much more that needs saying. All right. Those are our picks. There will be polls put out for this one with plenty of time to spare, thankfully, because the event starts next week. And yeah, hopefully I can keep building on my lead. If you made it this far in the video, you're my hero. Leave a comment
telling me. Win it?
If Falcons win it, well, they can't. But if they go out of if they make it out of groups, I'll cry. But yeah, leave a comment telling me why I'm wrong, why G2 Snacks is the greatest transfer move ever. I see you coming, whatever your name is. It's long and complicated to say, but leave another couple paragraphs. I'm here for it. But yeah, we'll see you in the next one.